All right. Welcome to episode 3. We take a deep dive into Al, who is our I, which stands for influencer. We talk a lot about his history, how he got to where he is now. And the key points that I want you to take away is how to deal with an I, no matter where you are on the spectrum, the things that are important to them. Also, listen to how Al really can go off on a tangent, because that is very stereotypical of when you're selling to an I, and you have to be able to enable that as well as shut that off, and listen to some of his industry knowledge, because he works in one of the hardest industries to sell in, to be successful in, and he does a really good job of it. um, Appreciate all the feedback from the earlier episodes. Follow us on social media and subscribe, and hope you get a lot from the show.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the main event. In the D corner, we have Clint the Cleaver Bigelow. In the I corner, we have Al the Gambler Daniel. In the S corner, we have Nan the Promoter Foreman. In the C corner, we have John Small Mountain Hill. Let's get ready to throw down!
Awesome. All right. Episode 00003.
There you go.
There we go. We're
Like
going to be
it.
here for a while.
That's right.
Back in the
Today,
saddle.
we are taking the deep dive into I, which stands for influencer, or in my world, it means impulsive.
But back up and do the whole disc thing, just so that people who are joining us now kind of catch up.
Okay, yeah.
to-
If you
to
didn't listen
speed.
to episode 1 or 2, right, we are here talking about DISC, which is a personality assessment that is very popular in sales. And it's popular because everybody has strengths, everybody has weaknesses. Makes up of 4 corners, D, I, S, and C. We make up those 4 corners. Episode 2, if you haven't listened to it yet, go back and listen to it. We spend the entire time talking about D. We talk about Clint and who he is and why he's here. And today we're doing the same thing, but we're going to talk about Al, his history, why he's here, and all things I, weaknesses, strengths, and everything in between.
Probably more weaknesses and strengths.
Yeah,
but
there
anyway.
we go.
I
So
don't know if we brought enough booze for this.
You'll be okay.
Okay.
All right,
It's gonna
Al.
be rough, guys.
So what do you do now?
I own a medical distributorship and a couple of clinics. Herd a bunch of cats, which are called doctors. But
Okay.
they're not cool cats. They're crazy cats.
All right. How long have you been doing that?
20-something years.
Okay. And what'd you do before that?
I was a bellman.
Oh, come
going-
on. We're missing
going
something
all the
in
way
there.
back.
Every
Yeah.
hour.
You go
of
to
our
ground
lives.
zero, baby. Ground zero right there. Hauling bags, working for tips.
I promise you, that will not be the last time you hear that statement.
I know everything I know predicated on the 8.5 years
I
I,
love that.
hustled for tips.
That's
8.5 years, guys.
Well, that explains a lot about your personality too, that you could do that, because not everybody can do that.
Oh, Clint would just set the hotel on fire.
Throw baggage.
$2. $2?
Bro, the best thing I ever saw was a guy throw a quarter over somebody's car. He got tipped a quarter. Now, this is back in the 80s, but still it was a buck. And so guy gets a quarter. He's standing in the drive, throws it over the dude's car. The guy stops, and he stands there, arms crossed. And I'm like, ballsiest, like Top Gun, ballsiest move I've ever seen.
You can be my wingman
Yeah,
anytime.
exactly. I was like, dude, you run the front drive, man. That's great.
That's awesome.
So one of the big things about being an I is they're storytellers, in case you did not just pick up on that.
Well, funny how I just fell right into that,
Exactly.
right?
Mhm.
So, let's focus on the thing that I think is more interesting, right? Because you talk about the clinics, but let's talk about the main distributorship, right? Selling
Okay.
medical devices, hardware, all of that stuff.
Can I back up a little bit?
Yeah, of course.
Because you can't go from a bellman into medical.
Yes, you
field.
can. If you're good enough.
Okay.
There's something
There's a
in
stop
between.
there
I
in the
think-
middle that
I
he's
think-
dodging on purpose.
Yeah, I
There's
get
a
it.
reason why
Thank you, Clint.
Clint and Nan call him Doc.
Yeah, I think you should dive into that a little bit, because it gives some background and some feedback into why you're doing what you do now.
And eyes aren't genuinely humble, so let's be real here. We love this. Go ahead.
So what's the question?
How did you get from being a bellman to where you are today?
Owning a broke ass medical distributorship.
Broke ass. Come on.
Whatever. Okay, go ahead.
Hey.
Tell your story.
Where to start? You know, basically a junior college graduate. Found my way into some upper studies. Ended up eventually graduating as a chiropractor.
There you go.
Came out into the world of chiropractic care in 1995. Worked as a slave to a couple of guys for about 4 years. No, man, you're dead broke when you get out of school, man. I mean, you don't have a pot to piss in. You can't wait to work. As a matter of fact, when I got out of school, the state had a moratorium on issuing licenses only because they just didn't have what they called a 4-person panel to sign off on this. So I went back to hauling bags for about a month.
I didn't know that.
I didn't know
And
that either.
they were like,
hard.
"Oh my God, great to have you back." Wasn't with the same company, but some guys had switched over.
But you had a formal education at this point.
I did, man. I had postgraduate education.
Were you irritated by this process about having to haul bags while you a chiropractor and everything but title?
I could have worked for $10 an hour shooting X-rays and working under the tutelage of somebody, but I played softball with these guys and it continued the relationship. So they were like, "Hey, come help us straighten some things out at the hotel chain." And it was a big hotel.
So did you miss the camaraderie of what you had? Was that what you were missing as a bellman?
Missing? I'm sorry, I don't know.
So after you got out of school,
yep,
right, you were missing some.
No, it's missing money. I needed cash.
Okay.
And that was immediate cash. I didn't have to wait for anything. I show up, I get paid. Man, that's the beauty of that position. And I knew it well. So it was an easy fix to make, $3,000 a month, right? Which is, I wasn't going to make that working as like an unlicensed associate. So I jumped into that. The license came through, because this is old snail mail, right? This isn't immediate, sit on the computer and get your credentialing. Took it, came in the mail. I'm like, holy crap, man, I'm licensed. I'm game on. Immediately went back to the hotel and said, "Hey, guys, having to give up the position. They're, oh, shit. Didn't think it was going to be this quick." I said, "See ya." And already had a job lined up. So started working for a guy. And slave wages still. But wait a second. Let me back up. I actually made $36,000 was my starting salary. I was like ghetto rich, man. I mean, I had made probably 30-something grand as a tip to guy, but I'm working all kinds of
salary
shifts.
makes it different.
Oh yeah, I know it's guaranteed.
What year are we talking about?
1995.
Okay.
Yeah. So were you even born then?
Yeah.
Oh,
come
okay.
on.
Sorry.
But damn good salary at 95.
Well, it was more. Well, I had spent 4 years making no money or parking cars, doing little odd jobs, throwing newspapers. I mean, I'm always was all about finding a buck. And
so the daily hustle, definitely a driver. You like that?
Well, I'd come from that 8.5 years. It's a daily hustle if you show up at a hotel and you're hauling bags, and that's what you do. Welcome to the hotel. Boom, boom, boom. Yep. Pull them out of the trunk, walk them in, or take them from the bell stand and walk them up to the room. And it's just that was the game.
How long were you? So you come on as an associate, right? They train you, which is, I'm sure, very helpful. Sales is one of the few industries where you don't actually get shown very much in a lot of instances. And then you eventually have some clinics under you. And
well, when you get out of school, you have what we call the didactic, right? You've got the cortical knowledge. You've pushed through the books. You've sat your boards. You've paid your dues in that sense. But you've really not seen the business end of that equation, which is how do you run a practice? How do you make payroll? Rules, regulations, don't get sued, stay insured. All of those concepts are kind of foreign to you. And what does that look like cost-wise? Right?
So as the eye, right, a lot of this business stuff, the backside of things is not the thing that you naturally run to. So how do you balance that, as well as also having to provide front-end care? And in a minute, we're going to talk about how you left that world, but I'm kind of curious about this.
Well, as an eye, what you do is you make strategic alliances, right? And we're real good at abdicating power to people in a certain sense.
Okay, interesting.
In that, get a good attorney, get a good accountant, get a good office manager. I have the first person I ever hired 24 years later, right? Because people tend to generally like eyes. And we can pitch fits and we can have our bad moments, but most of the time we're willing to kiss and make up. If I step on your toes and I know about it, I'm going to come with an apology if it makes sense.
It's hard to stay mad at an eye. Everybody, everybody, I think in your friend circle, you'll find that you always have a high eye. Otherwise, you're not having fun. There's no doubt. I mean, they are the ones. They're the drivers of those situations. You go out to a bar, you go out. Let's just say camping. They're always going to find the fun side of any situation.
They usually create it initially.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, and that's a good point.
Well, and part of that is being a dreamer, being an idea person,
Creative.
Yeah.
Well, and I don't know how creative I am, but whenever people are starting to brainstorm stuff, you're like, well, how would you fire that up, right? Great idea.
Mhm.
How do you put the glitz, the glamour, the pizzazz into that? Or, oh, wouldn't it be cool to do this? Or adding to the story that somebody brings to you.
Mhm.
And case in point. So I got to a point where guys were starting to get married, right? It was like the bachelor party thing. Being from the hotel industry, we're like, well, let's get the bus and let's get the keg of beer. And so no lie. So I'd be on the front right there by the door. People were partying in the back. We'd pull up to a strip club and I'm like, pop the door. I'd walk to the front door. I'd go, I got 40 guys on a bus. We'll drink 2 drinks. We want all the women up front in our face. We're not staying very long, but here's my commitment. They're like, bring it. No cover charge. They're moving chairs out of the way, right?
Yeah.
That simple little introduction. And then at the end of the night, guys are like, oh, my God, that was amazing. I didn't have to drive. This is before Uber and all of that kind of stuff. So, and I got a little excited when I said
Of course
that.
you did.
Yeah,
When I think about an eye and going back to like your bellman days and your stories that you're telling, I think of a concierge. Every concierge I know of is very much what you're describing.
We were all trying to have sex with the concierge. they were more of a female staff, right?
Okay.
Except for the big guy that
it's
has.
not anymore.
No, I was going to say, it's a male kind of industry originally. Like in Europe, the concierge was usually a man. But when it came over here, it was usually pretty girls that were setting you up with the reservations.
That makes sense.
So we did have a concierge staff in addition to Bellman. We were the grunts, basically. We weren't, anything but.
What a different outlook on sales, talking about what you're talking about, because that's a hustle, right? You're figuring people's personalities out, what they like, what they don't like.
Are you even aware of that though?
I don't know that you're aware, but I think it comes naturally because he's an eye.
Well, you perceive a need, okay?
Right.
So, and I often tell people, and this is one line I use over and over again, when somebody comes to your business or you're introducing somebody to what you do, they may know a little bit or they may know nothing. It's like if you come to my clinic, you don't know where the restroom is. I need to be able to tell you. If you walk into a hotel, you don't know where the front desk is. Maybe it's your first time to stay, or maybe you're a seasoned traveler that stayed with us before. Hopefully I would recognize it. It's like going to your favorite bar or whatever. They know what you're going to drink. If not, you really need to perceive a need. When somebody sits there and they have a blank look on their face, ask a question.
Yeah.
You know?
That brings me to a really good question, because I'd like to ask to stay on task, because that's tough.
It is
here,
tough
right?
for an
It's going to
eye.
be tough for today. But
Take a shot every time Al tells a story.
yeah, one of the things I want to talk about is
You'll get drunk really quick.
as an eye, I know you slide to a D a lot in business. I see that because I know you. But naturally in a social setting, I think you're an I. And what drives you? Is it people pleasing? Is it the people orientation? Is it money? Is it what's your drivers?
Is it the relationships?
Relationships, yeah.
You know, I think the drive that I have is clearly not money. Money comes along the way.
Okay.
I look at delivering service. Often, and this didn't come from me, it came in a collective drinking session with a bunch of guys other than you. Give till it hurts and then give a little bit more. But I expect certain things from the people that I give to, right? I expect you to be a good friend.
Okay.
All right. I don't expect you to fuck me. Right.
Yep.
Don't go around my back. Never lie to me. Okay. Or make it so minor that I would understand why you would. Because I give everybody 100 points and you get to lose them. I don't make you earn anything. But once you lose.
That's some deep shit there.
That's not how Clint works.
I understand. I was like,
you start at 0.
Okay.
-2.
Okay. But when you say they're dead to me, I've got that too. You
Agreed.
lost all your tokens.
But you had a lot.
You're dead.
But you had to do some. Yeah. No,
Now,
that makes sense.
I don't want to kill you after the fact, and I'll still stand in a room with you, but we'll know each other, and you'll know why you don't need to talk to me about certain things, and you need to be very pleasant,
Sure.
or I'll call Clint.
Okay, so hold on.
Is it-
So let's get through the history and let's stay on task. Right? Because
Something I want to make a
Please.
comment on that. He does mention the whole throwing bags.
Throwing bags. I never threw anybody's
Okay.
bag.
Are we talking
I
cornhole?
carried-
I love cornhole.
I carried them one in
Carrying
each hand
bags.
or put them on a
Right, right.
cart and took them to the
So
room.
he
Throwing
referenced-
somebody's bag? Only if you didn't tip me, then that bitch is going down the stairwell, right?
Oh, this is
Clunk,
breakable.
clunk, clunk.
Okay, so he references that all the time, but I think it's amazing how that was such an impact creating you, who
For
you
sure,
are.
right?
Yeah.
It's
Over
humble
even the
beginnings.
chiropractic.
It definitely
over-
shaped you.
And I hear that a lot in business. I hear, there's a guy that he threw newspapers and that what
we
that
talked
did.
about
too.
We talked about it with me being a D. I started out as a
Yeah,
helper,
it's-
right? So like it's funny because a lot of successful people, they didn't just come into success; they had to
Exactly.
work for it
Yeah.
at some point, and they developed
Right.
themselves through experiences. And your experience to start off to develop you into who you are now started there. And I think
Absolutely.
so. To get back to task is that's where we started. At.
Yeah. So after you're an associate, you go out on your own, right? You're pretty successful there. You have a couple of clinics, right, going on.
You know, it was one of the craziest moments. I was working for a guy that just was never around the clinic, and I was making him a lot of money, and things were going well. I basically the greatest asset I think is for people to underestimate your capabilities. That you're doing a great job, but you would never leave, right?
Yeah.
Or that you don't have the financing to leave. You know, the money's the easy part. If you got a great idea, you just got to pitch it to enough people and sell somebody on backing you with the funding.
Mhm.
I happen to come from a family that's a lot like the mafia. They've got some cash, right? I have a rich side and a poor side. I came from probably the lesser side of those two equations, but I was able to pick up the phone and procure money. Now, my relative said, I'm not a bank, which means it's going to cost you.
Yeah.
And the craziest part was, so I spring out on my own, get into a lawsuit over the whole thing, right?
Oh,
So
wow.
my first big money lawsuit, consult with an attorney for the first time who says, all right, let's do the ROI on this venture that you're going out that's going to piss this other guy off, because the staff walked out with me.
Oh,
I
dang.
had a non-compete. I did not have a non-compete. So the original arrangement was, I'll work for you a year. We'll either partner up, because this was on the backside of the 4-year tenure of
Okay.
working for people. That didn't happen. So I challenged the equation. I was told that, I wasn't going to be taken on as a partner. So sprouted wings and left. That cost me $100K.
Were you always kind of entrepreneurial,
Yeah.
or is it like is that part of the I toolkit?
Yeah, I think so. As a kid, I grew up in a Fox and Jacobs neighborhood. My dad was an electrician. All the extra we had was because of overtime and things like that. And I mowed yards. I saw needs in my neighborhood. Back before it was weird for a dude to babysit kids, my cousins lived there, so I babysat them. Then I got known as the guy that you would call if you had unruly kids that nobody wanted to look after, right? Somehow I got along with those guys the best. And so I got $3 an hour instead of $1 an hour,
There you
right?
go.
So I was already up the pay scale
Yeah.
as a kid around the neighborhood, because I just followed through and somehow accomplished everything, as lame brain as I kind of probably was at the time.
So naturally entrepreneurial, right? So I think
Somehow, yeah.
yeah.
But is it able for you? Are you able to chase dreams? I mean, comfortably? Because you seem like that guy.
Oh, absolutely.
So when we talk about even what we're doing right now, it was a dream, a pipe dream for us. Us three, the other three people here, me, John, and Nan, probably wouldn't have followed through without your kind of drive and your push.
And I was going to say,
I disagree.
He does not have fear. And I don't know if that's.
Well, you're saying I have fear because fear's good, right? Fear of death, fear.
Height-
I don't want to die.
heightens a
I
lot of
don't have
senses.
fear of failure, though. I don't.
I apologize.
I'm not
That's what I
afraid
mean.
of making a mistake. I'm not afraid
Say
of
what you
somebody
say.
going, "You're
Yeah.
wrong," and I'm like, "You're absolutely right. I am."
Well,
That only happens occasionally. Thank
Say the
goodness.
recreate comment that you always say. That you kind of made mention of it a few minutes ago, but I can recreate something.
Oh, if you hadn't lost it all and burnt your fucking house down, you hadn't really lived, man.
And
When
I
you
think-
show up and one day you look at your bank account and you go, "Shit, I got no money," right? I'm going bankrupt, right? And you're like, which I haven't, thank goodness. But if you've never looked and felt the stress of, holy shit, this isn't working, and
Mhm.
said, what? But you know what you start doing then is working the next plan, which is the out and then the back end. right?
Yeah.
How do I move or transition into another economic situation? And if you're sweating that, don't get in business for yourself, because I can challenge just about everybody, unless you're you're born with that silver spoon where there's a lot of family money. Everybody who has made any money has lost a ton of it.
Yeah.
You know,
or you've had to gamble in some tight spots.
well, I say you throw 100 things against the wall, you hope 2 stick, and you hope one makes a lot of money and the other one doesn't cost you a lot of money, because
That's
people
interesting.
forget.
I would agree that you do that. I don't do that. I don't think John does that.
But John gambles, so he understands the risk, but his risk is in
But
a
they're
box,
calculated
man.
risk.
Yeah, my risk is very informed.
I try to stay informed, so I don't think that I don't spend a lot of time on the web looking at what other successful people are doing,
Mhm.
and then adopting bits and pieces of what they do that fit my personality. So you do Kung Fu, and one of the things that often, I mean, you learn a lot of stuff, right,
Is
when you do
Kung Fu.
martial arts, and you've been to combat. There's a lot of techniques. You use the ones that best fit you,
Yeah.
because they just fit your style, your personality, your body size, what you're capable of.
So let's talk about you leaving the clinic space and
Okay.
moving into the medical device sales. Arguably the hardest thing to sell, and it was the hardest thing I've ever sold.
Okay.
Because you
yeah.
worked for Doc,
Yeah, I mentioned that on the last episode. I worked
did.
for Al for about 18 months.
and Nan currently works for Doc.
yes,
Um,
they work together.
More with me. I mean, I
Okay.
always look at the people that, are, particularly on the sales side,
Agreed.
as being my partners, because they're commission oriented. So it's a partnership, right?
I mean, yeah,
That's fantastic of you to say that.
Al
'Cause
took a
mo-
big shot on me for sure, because I was working at a bank. I was selling investments,
Yeah.
and I'd never been in the B2B space. And Al and I knew each other from Kung Fu, and so one day he was like, "Hey, I got a spot. You want to
That's
talk
right,
about it?"
bitches. Bring it. That's a hard hitting
from-
mofo sitting behind this desk.
From
So-
the center.
Shout out to everybody that's in the martial arts, or
Absolutely.
the attack
Absolutely.
world of like special ops and things like that.
So let's talk a little bit about how you transitioned from chiropractic clinic to this, and the failure rates and why it's so hard, and because it's really hard.
The best thing ever said to me, 2 things, right? 2 things, and this made me. I think I got an erection, right? My banker says to me one day, "I didn't realize chiropractors made this much money." I'm like, "Oh, motherfucker, man!" I'm like, end zone dance. I'm like, whoa. I mean, I'm a kid talking to a
One more
banker,
time,
right?
neither one-
And then I exited the clinic strategy because some dynamics in healthcare had changed, and it was basically because I was losing my ass. But other people in my industry complimented me on getting out of the game before I completely cratered, right?
Oh wow.
So they had lost big clinics and things like that because the industry didn't support it, and it was not me being prolific; it was me running for the hills because I couldn't make any money, right? So let people tell you what their perception is. Don't automatically sink that into your head. Just swim, just survive, just get down the road.
Yeah.
Are you so can we move forward a little bit? I'm looking at you, John, because I know you kind of have an agenda in your head. Have we covered fully where Doc is now? Do you feel that you have Doc?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I'm now sell dead body parts, nuts, bolts, and screws. I got to and I have a couple of there's more than one division to what we do.
And I got a sneak peek into your world, just a touch, and that really opened my eyes to is completely different. We're both in sales.
Mm-hmm.
We're both in the day-to-day grind. Your business and mine are completely different, but we both have to follow processes. We both have to follow certain rules of the game. And I was pretty shocked about what you guys go through, you and Nan especially, on that side. But can we talk about when we talk about dealing with an I, and we talk about motivators and these big buzzwords? How would you describe yourself as an I? Besides the clinks of the ice cubes,
It's like,
Clink, clink,
that was
clink.
like timing. Man,
Yeah.
perfect.
I'm not sure I fully understand the question.
So if you had to describe yourself in some big words, 3 or 4 big words, what would those be?
Or buzzwords, right?
Yeah,
They don't have to be.
buzzwords.
yeah, I was gonna say.
That's not to have just empty air there. That's a hard one because I let other people tell me who I am a lot of times.
So true.
Yeah.
I don't walk around with a definition. I
mean,
really, really don't.
You do, Clint.
Correct.
He's waiting.
Well, that's.
I'm like, you're an ass. I'm like, okay, thank you for telling me that. Or
Literally.
you're
He
amazing.
says that.
Thank you for telling me that. Why do you ask? You know. So you tell me what you think, and then we'll figure it out.
So I in DISC stands for influencer, right?
Oh, okay.
How do you feel?
I knew that, but yeah.
Oh, really?
Thank you for telling me that. Please elaborate.
In your world, how do you feel that you're an influencer? Your social settings in your day to day.
I think I want the other person that I'm speaking to succeed. I want all my friends to be wealthy, happy, great people, right? I want to see you guys because you'll invite me to what you're doing. You know, your big house or, you know, a lunch or whatever. We'll have some good times together. But what I don't like is people that live in a bucket of misery, right? Go jump off a bridge, man. I got no time for that. Life is tough. And you gotta find the silver lining. But some people out there just need to go kill themselves, right? They're just not getting it done.
Side note, we're not actually advocating anyone to go kill themselves.
No,
absolutely not. Guy, seriously, if you're thinking that,
so
then you got a problem.
And
right?
craziness.
I don't mean to speak directly to the audience, but really, come on, guys, stop listening. If that's gonna butt hurt you and you're gonna jump off a bridge.
Well, I think with dealing with eyes myself a lot, you guys say a lot of things that I have to read between the lines on what you actually mean, which is to the point of what you just said is, you know, you need to find a new profession, and you know if this isn't successful for you, you need to find a new profession. And I got to read a lot of content and pull a lot of text to your comment that you just said to pull that out of it.
Well, okay.
And a lot of eyes are like that.
Very extreme statements.
But to speak to that, you know, a lot of I've just been able to meet some really successful people. And the big fallacy is to look at somebody and say, I could do that. I just don't walk around and do that. I think they put a lot of time and effort into it. They make it look easy. That's why they're good at it. They make it look easy. Yeah. That's why they're good at it. But you don't see the backstory of all the hours they took to hone their skill set. Because when they show up at the table, you're all hanging out, or you're at a business meeting. They're like the movie. He's bona fide.
Yeah, right? Exactly.
So you know, I just look across and that's giving the 100.
Dan right here.
That's giving that 100 points. That top scale. He's bona fide till he proves otherwise. I'm not making him prove anything.
So would you say you have compassion for that grind?
Oh, a lot of respect.
Compassion. That's
so. Dr. Daniel's best friend is the coolest man. I'm telling you.
Man's got man love for him.
I just think he rocks. I mean, he's just so, and he loves Al, and their personalities are so completely different.
Know like you.
Okay. Yeah, he's a D.
So awesome.
but hold on, awesome. I know a lot of awesome people. I know a lot of C's that I have immense respect for. My accountant's a C. I wouldn't expect him to be anything other. Yeah. And the guy, literally, I'm at the gambling tables and they're wanting some information from me. I got him on speed dial. I'm like, what's going on? He's like, oh, chill. We got this. They're just I'm like,
you don't want an accountant that's not a C.
Well,
you don't want an S accountant. You don't want a D accountant.
but
you definitely don't want an I accountant.
You definitely don't want an I accountant. He'll burn it at the strip club.
Here's the great part. Here's the great part of my accountant, though, right? You know, and he's amazing. We'll give him a shout out later at another episode. But it's this little chuckle whenever I call. Like, what's up now? What's going on now? And
don't you get that from everybody though?
And we laugh a lot on the phone, right? Which I know is him coming out of his little C world to go, what now, right? And that's the fun part of life. What now?
So one of the big things about being an I, right, is that they're friendly with everybody. Like in a social interaction, you're typically the center of attention. You're telling a story.
I'm yelling at you.
But how does that translate to business, right? Because one of the things that we know that selling to an I, you got to give them room to talk. You got to let them tell their stories. You can't shut them down too quick. You can't force them to stay on task.
But you also have to focus them at some point.
Absolutely, right? So, but that looks like sometimes there's this need to be liked with most I's.
I'm usually liked, right?
Yeah.
My biggest thing is not to talk over people. My biggest thing is to listen to their story and not tell them mine. those are the biggest challenges. When you understand that you're talking to a D as an I, that should be your biggest asset. You understand other people. So you let them be the person that they need to be in the conversation. You pull yourself back when you need to. You step in front when you need to.
And you're very good at that in the OR. He is phenomenal with just the respect level. I think you're really phenomenal at what you bring to the room.
Well, part of that too is you got to couple your personality with showing up early, staying late, knowing your shit.
Yeah,
right?
He's
I mean,
really-
you can't be just a bag of
bones.
Yeah, I mean, you've got to have some meat and potatoes and some
your
some
knowledge is
rigor
power
to what
in
you
your world.
Absolutely. You need
Absolutely.
to have read the material, know it, but you're not in there vomiting. You're
Yeah.
seeing like when something's not working, you're interjecting a solution.
Yeah,
right? You got to be able to figure stuff out.
I watched in an OR that day that they said, "Oh shit, where's Al?
Mhm.
Where's he at? Can you go get him? Go get him." And I was like, "Oh my god."
And his eye does not come out in the
No.
OR, so he
It
can
is
rein
really
it in.
crazy. My
It
first
is crazy.
day, we're in the OR. It's like 5 a.m. in the morning, and I don't know like anybody from it. I know Al, and I think I'd met you once,
Mhm.
and he's just like, sit over here or stand over here. Don't touch
Don't move.
anything.
Don't touch.
And don't talk to anybody yet. And I was like, okay, yeah,
gotta earn
which
your
made me
respect.
feel incredibly uncomfortable.
Which is me politely saying, "Don't fuck it up." Right?
exactly.
Because you touch something that you shouldn't touch, and now we got to strip everything down.
Oh yeah.
And everybody, and hold on, and there's 16 people that are pissed at you,
Mhm.
Yeah.
because you inadvertently, got in the way. And remember, there are rules to follow in there. And for those of you, you go into a surgical situation where you're doing a major spine surgery. That's a really serious event, right? So you can, if you're really good at something, like, you've been to war, right? You can break tension, but you want to know everybody on the team is in for whatever happens. And that's the way a surgery is. I mean, you got to be there if the patient bleeds out, they have a heart attack while they're on I mean, I can go time and time again about how.
And you got to adapt to the situation. You got to overcome and
Absolutely.
the chaos.
It's the
You gotta do
same.
that, yeah.
It's the same principle there that you guys probably experienced in a
Very
lot
much-
of the things that
Very
you
much
did.
so. Yeah.
So I think that the reason that we are talking about this, I think it's really important that an I, being just flamboyant and attention getter, can step into not being that way. Just,
Well, you're still that way. What it is you're doing your job.
Mhm.
Your personality gets probably put at a lower key because your focus is now on what's the next step. What's the next step? We're in a process, and everybody has that. So when you go to do something, there is a process. You follow the rules. Being an I doesn't mean you don't follow the rules, or you skirt around them.
So let's talk about the other side of that world, right? All the people that are trying to sell to these doctors, knocking on offices and everything
Mhm.
else like that, and they haven't had any success yet because it's a very long selling cycle, which is
Can
great
be.
for an I because you're so relationship driven. It's like doing the whole lunch thing and the happy hour thing, like that's right in your wheelhouse.
It is.
How do you balance that with being productive?
Okay, and I thought that's where you were going. You probably need to live in an arena where the margins are large enough to where, when you start talking about big surgeons and big volume in Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex, there may be 30 or 40 guys, maybe 50 guys
Mhm.
that are just big producers. And it doesn't take very many of them before you've got a great standard of living.
Mhm.
And so you're going to run through and get to know these guys as they're going through the hospital. And they can speak to this. There's a lot of people that know us and we talk to them. They just don't buy from us. They like us.
well,
And
they're
I'm
already
like,
they're already working
and they're
with
already
someone.
tied up with somebody. So I'm
You know,
waiting
and
for
you
the
have to
next guy to
respect
make a
that.
mistake. And I see a
Right.
lot of good cats whenever I'm in the OR. The people I work around, the other vendors, man, they're a lot like us.
Mhm.
They're good. They show up. And here's the crazy part. And I guess I'll be honest. I've had this happen two ways. I've saved other vendors because I just don't want to, and they got families. I don't want to see them go without. So I'm going to try to cover or help them out because they would. Now, very seldom does anybody have to help me out. I think I'm that good, and that's a little bit of my ego. So I don't make very many mistakes. And when somebody else makes a mistake, I know they have a family. I know they have kids they want to feed. So I'm going to make sure that if there's anything I can do to help them continue their career in the OR, because you don't get a whole lot of mistakes, particularly when you're dealing with live people that are on the table. I want to, that's my, that's just my nature not to fuck somebody over.
That says a lot to your personality. I's, S's, people driven, right? That says a lot to that. And whereas John and I, as a top side of the spectrum, that are not, we're task oriented, not people driven. We would not agree with you there. That me personally, I would just kind of be like, man, you screwed up, you fucked up, get out, my show now. Yeah, that's my drive versus what you're saying
Absolutely.
right now.
And I've had other people in the business ask me, is he really that kind? He will not throw people under the bus. He doesn't. And one of the big guys literally came to me and was just like, is he really, like, would he screw someone over? And I said, no, he will not screw people over. He just doesn't do that. And you don't.
But I don't think, you say what you say, but I think that everybody sitting at this table genuinely would not F somebody over.
So I think
or we wouldn't be sitting here.
Right.
I couldn't sit here with a clean conscience.
I completely concur.
You're right. We're all talking about the corners of the personality spectrum, which is DISC. You just have, the reason this all started is that we're all in those corners naturally. That's how our DISC profiles show up. So yeah, we're all self-aware now. We've done a lot of training. We've done a lot of self-awareness to change ourselves to be better. A lot of people sitting out there listening to this aren't, right? Exactly. So I want to. One of the things that we want to dig out of an I is how do you communicate with an I? How do you? What are the traits? How do you identify with an I?
Oh, there are eyes that drive me nuts, right? I was just telling you guys this the other day. I was dealing with a guy from California, and he was a nice enough guy. Man, he just went off on tangents about from his computer side of things that I just didn't have time for, and anyway, everybody's got a certain style. I think that what eyes are good at is allowing people to be themselves and giving them the latitude to be that way. It's not that you don't judge them; it's just that you let them be that way, even with your judgment that you put on top of it. But if the process gets done, and this guy did, I didn't like the style, but he did what he said he was going to do, got me a deep discount, followed through, so I had nothing to complain about. He showed up as he probably genuinely was, and so I have to really sort of have an appreciation for that. Yeah. But I have to sometimes step away from that because it does get annoying.
Sure. I always commend eyes for being able to, in a roundabout way, say, go F yourself. But they do it in a manner that you still want to hang out with them, which is a crazy thought, because I can't do that. John, you can't do that. When we say go F yourself, we mean it, and you're dead to me, because we're not people oriented. And S would never say that anyway, so it doesn't really hold any weight to this conversation. But an I can say.
Did you just really tell Nan to go ever?
Nan,
you're of no value here.
Nan's not going to say that, though.
That's what I mean. But Nan would never say that, so it doesn't. That's a complete corner S.
I'm calling your mom. She's going to wash her mouth out with soap.
Let me tell you. I've eaten some zest.
Me too.
See?
All right.
No, really, across the board, has everyone been punished with soap in the mouth?
Yeah. I've chewed bars of soap and cried.
The word stupid, right?
Yeah, stupid.
Twice. Let's talk about one of the bigger things in sales that is super important that we have all learned is going for the no. And the reason why I'm interested in this is because I think it's really hard for an I, because you're so relationship driven, and it's really easy to kind of hang out and hope that something is going to happen. And hold on, the other part of that is your industry specifically. There's not, as you just said, there's not that many players. So you can't just blatantly disqualify people. It's not a no for forever. It's just a no for today.
Which is way different than talking about my personality in my industry, where I can do that. So that's a really good question, John.
Let me stop you guys. My biggest successes with these guys I deal with has been when I said, this probably isn't something you're interested in. It's hard for me to say that. But there's been my biggest reward when I'm like, why would I do that? Right. And it puts them off because they think I'm the guy that would say yes to everything. I initially never say no, but I don't say yes.
So you said that's really hard for you to say. What's the fear, and why?
It's not fear. It's just my general personality is just to go along with whatever you're,
Whatever's the
and
status
saying,
quo.
oh my God, this is great. The guy's like responding well to me. I want to be liked.
Yeah.
But what I'll do is I'll catch myself, and I have to literally catch myself and then challenge the prospect. Right?
Were you always that way?
No, I did a lot of free consulting. I did a lot of vomiting in front of these guys. And I had some hits. Don't get me wrong. I wasn't unsuccessful.
I still catch him every once in a while.
I just became more successful when I started following a system that says, Clint, now why would we do that? John, why would we do that?
Yeah.
Nan, why do you think that's a great idea?
Mm-hmm.
So
instead of going, oh my God, that's amazing. Oh, yeah, I actually see what you're talking about. Clint, oh, amazing.
So you adapted a process, a sales process at some point in your business.
Absolutely.
That you didn't have?
No, I had a good personality, but no process.
So before the process, you were winging it.
Pretty much.
And
getting some hits,
sure.
Not starving.
Sure, it's not so that a lot of this concept is efficiency.
Absolutely.
So it's not that you're not successful. If you've ever made one sell, I touched on this a little bit. If you made 1 million phone calls and you got one, it's a successful model.
That's what I was doing. A lot of calls.
But man, to get 2 sales and have to call 2 million people because that's your hit ratio, that's tough.
That's
right?
a lot of work.
So to up your efficiency, you developed a process.
I started honing in on cutting off the fat, going in with the same personality, being the same person, but putting a process together that eventually got to a challenge question that made them come towards me instead of me constantly chasing them.
That's wow. That's revolutionary. Can you tell me a little bit more how you develop that and why you go through that process?
I went to some formal training and started I didn't invent that wheel. Somebody had a process that made a lot of sense to me.
Principles never change.
And I made it my own, right? Yeah. I used those tactics that I was taught, which part of it was DISC, understanding who my audience was, then going through bonding and rapport. Guys, stop me because we all come from the same mold. If I do some copyright
pain
stuff,
points,
pain points, and I get better every day. Every conversation I have makes me a little bit better than I was before. But there's a schematic in my head that I start to follow using my personality, using what I consider my charm or my talent or what I have to offer. And I'm okay following the process. I'm okay with no. Actually, I want to be better at hearing you say no, because then I'm like.
But that didn't always happen. That's a new development.
Well, not new, but I've been doing this for a while.
Well, I think you reacted. You react 20 years ago differently as a bellman versus now. That those two no's react in you differently because you're self-aware and you have a process, right?
And we talk about that where you bring your personality to the process, then you bend that process in little nuances to fit your personality. Yeah. So you don't give up who you are. You just become a better individual at the arena of selling, just like you would at fly fishing or any mechanical process. This is no different. Pick up the phone and make the call, do the introduction, get the appointment, those kind of things.
To me, you're a very good representative of you can teach new ways to people that have been doing something maybe 10 years, 5 years, 25 years. If you think you can't change, I think you're a really good representative of that.
You got to be coachable.
Yeah, you can be.
Oh, absolutely.
But you have to be self-accepting of who you are, and somebody has to kind of.
Well, to stop you there, you don't give up yourself to learn a new idea.
That's really interesting. I've never thought about it in that way, and I don't disagree with you. I 100% agree with you, but I think that some people think the other way and not even realize that they're thinking in that way.
Absolutely.
Does that make sense? I don't know if that's true or clear or not.
Because I said that when we were talking about D's a little bit, I touched on you have to take some of your ego and put it in the back seat. Yeah. Right. I touched on that, but you don't want to give up your natural traits because those traits are what make you who you are, and that's what gets the job done.
Sure.
That's what drives you every day. So don't give that up, but you have to soak in those little things and take a back seat.
So it's like the first time Nan was in the OR praying with somebody, right? She turned around and said, is that, I'm like, you had them in your wheelhouse. That's what they needed from you. Yeah. She gets called to pray with tons of people, like just yesterday, lady having a brain tumor removed. there are going to be these moments where you can really influence people's lives by being you, sticking to your process, and building those relationships.
Talk about trust.
It is. That's what it is. People trust you.
The underlying point is that there's all these different sales methodologies, right?
Mhm.
There's Carnegie and John Maxwell and like all the various ones.
Hundreds.
Sandler,
There
right?
are hundreds.
Hundreds of them, but they work in a vacuum, right? And you can take them just straight out of that classroom and use them and probably see some success. But it's not until you pair that with your natural state and understanding where you're weak that's where you really see success.
And where you're strong.
So let's
Also.
back up. When I first got out of school, I had the didactic, all the book knowledge, but I'd never seen the real practice of it.
Oh.
So you just hit on that. It's the same process. You get the book knowledge. Now, how do you go out and apply that? Because if you never apply it, then you shouldn't have learned it in the first place.
We call that a callback, dude. That was rock solid. I'm
Yeah.
so proud of you right now. That's
Well,
awesome.
Hey, to touch on that point a little bit, there's a lot of people out there who will tell you if you do these 10 things, if the 10 steps to sales success are these. You say a lot, John. That's a vacuum. That works in a vacuum. In one situation, yeah. If I did these 10 things correctly, okay, maybe that work.
But slow down, guys. You teach in a vacuum.
Oh, of course.
You don't have,
to each situation. I'm
now,
not
if we're in
denying
the
that.
field and we're running or we're
Yeah.
doing a sales call, which I love to go on dual sales calls because now you get the feedback,
Yeah.
Mhm.
right?
Well,
Because the vacuum is the
role play.
classroom, it's the
Mhm.
process. Then
Sure.
when Nan and I go into a sales call together, we play off of each other and
Yeah.
then we
So
debrief
strong.
after the
well,
fact.
what I was saying with that is that there's no 10 things that you can do to every situation. They all change. Every situation's a little bit different. You have to adapt. You have to do some things, and you have to be personality-wise. You have to be accepting to other personalities and do some things.
In a certain sense, I almost disagree. I still think you do the 10 things, but you let the client determine when those 10 things occur or whatever your sales process is.
Okay.
They put you off. They can't meet with you today. Stay with the bonding and rapport. Maybe do a challenge. Like,
Mhm.
well, when people tell me that, sometimes they really just don't want to meet with me.
Yeah.
John, is that the case we have here?
And
Those kind of things.
someday we're going to talk about a plan. But basically, I mean, truly, it's so important to go with the flow, but have a plan.
Yeah. Well,
so,
that's one.
Can I stop? But guys, we're going to foreshadow a lot of that as we get into the meat and potatoes of how we do this. We're just
Processes.
basically talking about who we are
we are.
and fitting into this process. But eventually, we will get to, if you guys listen long enough, I hope to tell you everything I know. And if you communicate with us and you get on some of our correspondence channels, let us know what you're thinking. What are your challenges? Because we all have them. Because that's what's made us kind of pull together.
Mhm.
Because we all approach them in a different way.
Yeah, well, you hit on it just a second ago when me and you kind of disagreed a little bit, right? So that's
I would never disagree with you.
you already did twice today.
Did that stump you a little bit?
Yeah, so that's the dynamic of this is that every day we're dealing with challenges. We're not always going to agree. We're not going to all have the same idea about how to deal with the situation.
Oh, and we're going to mess a lot of stuff up.
And we're going to mess a lot of stuff up.
It's not your success that you have to worry
failure.
about. It's like, was I a failure, and how do I not do that?
How do
again?
you learn from your failures? How do you move forward?
Mhm.
I'm hoping that out of this, one of my failures can save somebody listening a ton of time and money and resources.
Absolutely.
Right?
Shortening the learning curve. Because here's the beauty of making mistakes. When I said if you hadn't burnt your house down before, then you really haven't challenged yourself. You hadn't gone out. And not everybody's, some people are risk averse. I understand that. But if you're wanting to be successful at anything, you sort of got to extend yourself. But what you learn to do is recreate the success that much quicker. Because you've learned something. You don't waste your time with some of that other stuff as you got to the top of the hill the first time. So when you roll down the hill, you don't take the steep path.
Yeah,
you follow the
okay.
goat trail
Right.
up to the
You
top.
take the
right?
switchbacks.
Exactly.
So we're going to start
Okay.
wrapping up.
Yep.
Right?
Yeah.
We've been here talking for a minute, and obviously Al could talk all day.
Oh
Could-
no,
look,
really, guys?
John,
you gotta say goodbye.
John, I got a couple questions for you guys.
For us or for Al?
To wind down here
Okay.
on the I. So as a hard C, a high corner C naturally, John, how do you deal with when you sell to an I? How do you deal with that guy?
It's my hardest one, honestly,
Really?
because I want to focus on
Good.
facts. Yeah, and I'm not really great at small talk, and I don't really care about small talk with people that I don't care about. So when I'm dealing with an I and they want to tell me these stories, man, it just burns me out. Like, let's get to the fucking point, and let's talk about if we're gonna do business or not, because I've got other people to go talk to. I have to balance that with letting them chat and let them kind of control the conversation and get into that. It's not easy, but I know that it's there, and I know that I have to do it.
Yeah. So to put it in that crosshair axis perspective, you and Doc are very opposite personalities, right?
We struggled a little bit whenever we worked together, and it was mostly just because whenever we worked together, it was before we had done any of this work. I didn't know I was a C. He didn't know he was an I.
And we've become friendly over the last couple of years. So I'm not talking about you two directly. I'm talking about C's and I's.
But
you're gonna struggle.
Okay, but hear me out on this though. I think C's are great teachers, and I think I's. Personally, I like to learn.
Well, you got to get your information from somewhere.
So a lot of times, if somebody's got their facts and figures, that's kind of sexy. I'm like, all right, tell me a little bit about that, and don't get too disturbed if I run around and ask a bunch of questions that may not be germane, because I'm just trying to hone in. So a lot of the engagement that I have with I's is I have a question and you have some facts, and then I'm going to make a funny, and you got to put up with that.
Do you mean C's?
C's, yeah.
C's. I'm sorry.
C,
yeah. To C's, and so a lot of the dynamic between us is you've been an instructor to me in a certain sense, and I'm appreciative of it. All you have to do is buckle down and tolerate my nonsense as we get down the road.
That's true.
Because I'm going to follow your advice. I'm not doing my own books. I'm not fighting my own lawsuits. And I want some hard-hitting pit bull guys like yourselves in there. And I want the kindness that Nan brings to the table.
Yeah.
I want the whole village showing up for the event.
I think that's a good point. I think on the I spectrum that you gals and guys, as an I, you respect a lot of all of the great traits. You because you're a team player at the end of the day.
Absolutely.
So you like
Takes a village.
you like to see all the traits come into play. Everybody has a role. John has a role. I have a role. I'm your pit bull. He's your data guy. S is the one that kind of hones you in and
makes me feel good.
Makes you feel good.
Sure.
So not all personalities believe that. I think that the I's and the S's believe that a little bit more, because you're people driven.
But that's what I see. Everybody sees their own vision.
Sure.
That's the reality. So when somebody says, yeah, we see we roll up on an accident and somebody's vomiting and the other person's going, oh my God, that's amazing. Right. Or it's just, it's like life is like liver and onions. I personally love liver and onions. No, I love liver and onions, but to some people they'd want to vomit. That's all this is, liver and onions.
So
elaborate. I think I need to.
We're trying to wrap up.
Yeah. So I love your answer about the how you deal with I's, John, and Al. Your feedback was great. Nan, how do you deal as an S? Because to sell to an I from an S point of view, you guys are very people oriented. You guys like to talk about everything, what ifs, possibilities.
So I believe what an I needs is for someone to listen to them. So I try to listen and not respond too quickly and be cognitive of their feelings.
Yeah, so that's what me and John are missing in dealing with an I. But how do you push, if you're an S dealing with an I, how do you push the conversations forward in order to get task things done? Because to me, that would be the ultimate terrible situation in my head, is if I was an S.
Well, that's why you have to listen and hear what their need is and then respond to it.
I don't have any needs.
So
and they always have needs.
Yeah. So if I was an S out there listening to what you guys are talking about right now,
if you were an S,
if I was an S,
you're never going to be an S.
I get
Why
that.
do you even say that?
I get that. But if I'm out there and I'm an S trying to sell to an I, how do I move the conversation forward?
We take our shirts off.
Is that something?
By the way, Clint is married to the most beautiful S I've ever seen in my life. Oh my gosh,
Clint does have a pretty wife.
Baby.
All right, stay on task. Stay on task. So yeah, Nan, how do you keep a conversation moving forward when you're selling to an I?
I already said that I listen and then I respond to what I hear the need is, because they're going to say a lot of things.
Love.
lot of
They
things.
say big words.
Okay.
So you have to find what they really need.
So what Nan, because Nan and I work together, and so we come from our different personalities into the same equation a number of times. Nan listens. That's one of her strong traits. But Nan has an honest voice that tells me things that I hear, right? And and God, that sounds ambiguous, but
Well, does she hit you on more of like a spiritual level versus
I'm
a
not
factual
spiritual.
level?
No, I'm not
Yeah,
spiritual.
okay,
so
spiritual is not a great word. I'm struggling with the word to find, but an inner voice level.
her voice is one that I trust.
There you go.
Okay.
Okay.
So I guess maybe when you really hone it
It's
down,
like- it's
is
like the-
I know she's not going to tell me something that's a lie. She's going to be kind about anything that she says to me,
Yeah.
but she's going to be able to point out.
But it's
where-
genuine.
It is, but it's genuine. Like, hey, you weren't very nice there, or we
Yeah.
could do this a different way, and it would be better.
It's like your Garmin back in the day. Left turn.
A little bit.
Sure.
Now,
You
don't
trust
put
it.
us in a car together because sometimes that can go awry.
All right, so not to cut you off, but we
No,
got to wrap this up.
yeah.
Paul is giving us the look over there.
Okay.
So we didn't
Love
do
you,
this.
Paul.
We didn't do this yesterday or on the last episode because these are not going to take feedback very well anyway. But I'm curious, Al, for eyes in general, what's one piece of advice that you would give them to be better, more proficient, more efficient?
Get a process because you do get scattered.
Okay.
Learn
Okay.
from a system that you trust and that you want in your wheelhouse,
Okay.
That's good.
and use it and force yourself to use it. If you do, you will see your performance increase.
Is that the motivation? The increase?
When you win or you get a success, absolutely. I mean, and that's probably everybody sitting down
Yeah,
here.
I think so.
If you're
Everybody out
if
there,
you're
too.
successful,
Well, that's every salesperson.
and if you
Exactly.
see your bottom line, and
Which
if
is
you're trying to run a
everybody.
business and you got payroll and there's people that need to be paid, which is part of the role
Yeah.
that I play, then yeah, that's good.
And then specifically, and then we'll be done. I'm curious for people in the medical device industry specifically, if you're going to give them one piece of advice, and not even speaking just as an eye, but just in general, like where do you see people messing up or that they could be better?
Healthcare is a great industry. It's anywhere between 28% and 34% of the GDP of any given volume, meaning a city, state, country. It's a big industry. There's a lot of sales opportunities out there. You deal with a tough clientele. You deal with a lot of smart, challenging people that are your competition. Most of the people are educated in this arena and opinionated. You have to go in and you have to challenge yourself. You have to establish equal business stature. If you don't own a medical degree, you're dealing with somebody who thinks they have a leg up, but they really don't. They're still human beings just like you. Challenge yourself, know your system, know your product, and figure out what pain it solves for the industry.
Awesome. That's great.
Can I hit on one thing I'd like to talk about?
Oh
Before we went in?
man, when did you become an eye? Go ahead.
Well, so
He's like,
I'd like to hit on the fact that if I were a D selling to an I, it doesn't happen very often in my business.
Okay,
but,
that's fair.
But we do. We went down the spectrum a little bit. I think it's an easy transition for a D to an I. I think you have to realize that we're all here to have fun, and when you can talk about that fun side, you're on the same side of the spectrum, right? So as that crosshair, that vertical axis, horizontal axis, D's and I's are on the same side of the spectrum when it comes to certain traits.
Being gut driven.
Gut driven,
outgoing.
Outgoing.
Mhm.
We're we talked about a long time ago, dress, and you said, yeah, we all think we're dressed correctly. Me and you think we're dressed more correctly than those two.
Hip is a
You know,
mother, right?
But the point of it is that
much as they do.
yeah, the point of it is though that D's and I's are on the same side of the spectrum, so we can relate to some things. You have to find those commonalities to
Absolutely.
an I, from a D to an I, or from an I to a D. And S's and C's can do that. D's and C's can do that. But you have to find your commonalities in the personalities. And once you do that, I think it's easier for you to accept what you're dealing with, and you slide that way just a touch.
Well, and to add to that, trust and respect.
Sure.
I mean, if you keep those two values in any of these arenas, and when you look across the table, they don't have to be you. Because if that's all you can communicate to, you're in the wrong business.
They're never going to be you.
Absolutely. But people get all tied up with, well, I don't like that person. Well, so what? Go do your damn job.
Why would you want to deal with you? Because I wouldn't want to deal with me.
Oh, I know. I don't
think you want to deal with
eyes
you.
drive me nuts. I told you. I think I'd rather talk to you and you and you. Somebody that's not me, because then I'm like, okay, I get to shine a little bit more, be a little bit different.
So I think as we look around the personality spectrum, we have a lot of common words that will float throughout different personalities.
For sure.
D's and I's have some. C's and D's have some. I's and S's have some. S's and C's have some. We have those commonalities, and I want to take those buzzwords and I want to say, to our audience here that you will find. Look for those commonalities. Look for those buzzwords that you see in somebody else across the spectrum and run with that, because that's what's going to get you together. That's what's going to make you be able to work together.
That's awesome. Yeah. I think that's like probably the best place to end it. So thanks everybody for tuning in. If you want to reach out or if you have questions, reach out to us. All the social media, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, it's all at Sales Throwdown. And we'll be back next week. Go subscribe, follow us, give us feedback.
Go have a great week. Sell something.
I have a Snapchat channel, but it's not appropriate for sales.
All right.
Hey, guys, have a great week. Bye-bye.